Part 4, Chapter 3 of the Manxman. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Manxman by Sir Hall Caine. Part 4, Chapter 3. Philip had left the island on the morning after the marriage. He had gone abroad, and when they heard from him first, he was at Cairo. The voyage out had done him good. The long, steady nights going down the Mediterranean, walking the deck alone, the soft air, the far-off lights, thought he was feeling better, calmer anyway. He hoped they were settled in their new home, and well and happy. Kate had to read the letter aloud. It was like a throb of Philip's heart made faint, feeble, and hardly to be felt by the great distance. Then she had to reply to it on behalf of Pete. "Tell him to be quick and come out of the land of Egypt and a house of bondage," said Pete. "Say there's no manner of sense of a handsome young man living in a country where there isn't a pretty face to be seen on the sunny side of a blanket. Write that Kirry joins with her love and best wishes and she's busy whitewashing, and he'd better have no truck with Pharaoh's daughters." The next time they heard from Philip he was at Rome. He had suffered from sleeplessness, but was not otherwise unwell. Living in that city was like an existence after death. All the real life was behind you. But it was not unpleasant to walk under the big moon amid the wrecks of the past. He congratulated Mrs. Quilliam on her active occupation. Work was the same as suffering. It was strength and power. Kate had to read this letter also. It was like a sob coming over the sea. "Give him a merry touch to keep up his pecker," said Pete. "Tell him the Romans are terrible jealous chaps, and if he gets into a public house for a cup of tea, he's to mind and not take the girls on his knee. The Romans don't like it." The last time they heard from Philip he was in London. His old pain had given way. He thought he was nearly well again, but he had come through a sharp fire. The Governor had been very good, kept open the Deemstership by some means, also surrounded him with London friends. He was out every night. Nevertheless, an unseen force was drawing him home. They might see him soon, or it might be later. He had been 6 months away, but he felt that it had not been all waste and interruption. He would return with a new sustaining power. This letter could not be answered, for it bore no address. It came by the night mail with the same day's steamer from England. 2 hours later Mrs. Gorry ran in from an errand to the town, saying, "I believe in my heart I saw Mr. Philip Christian going by on the road." "When?" said Pete. "This minute," she answered. "Chut, woman," said Pete. "The man's in London. Look, here's his letter," running his forefinger along the headline. "London, January the 21st. That's yesterday. See?" Mrs. Gorry was perplexed, but the next night she was out at the same hour on the same errand, and came flying into the house with a scared look, making the same announcement. "See for yourself, then," she cried. "He's going up the lane by the garden." "Nonsense! It's browning you're ateing with your barley," said Pete, and then to Kate, behind his hand, he whispered, "Whisht! It's sights she's seeing, poor thing, and no wonder, with her husband laving her so lately." But the third night also Mrs. Gorry returned from a similar errand, at the same hour, with the same statement. "I'm sure of it," she panted. She was now in terror. An idea of the supernatural had taken hold of her. "The woman manes it," said Pete, and he began to cross-question her. How was Mr. Christian dressed? She hadn't noticed that night, but the first night he had worn a coat like an old Manx cape. Which way was he going? She couldn't be certain which way to-night, but the night before he had gone up the lane between the chapel and the garden. Had she seen his face at all? The first time she had seen it, and it was very thin and pale. "Oh, I wouldn't deceive you, sir," said Mrs. Gorry, and she fell to crying. "Gough bless me, but this is mortal strange, though," said Pete. "What time was it exactly, Jane?" asked Kate. "On the minute of 10 every night," answered Mrs. Gorry. "Is there any difference in time now," said Pete, "between the Isle of Man and London, Kitty?" "Nothing to spake of," said Kate. Pete scratched his head. "I must be putting a sight up on Black Tom. A dirty old trouse, God forgive me, if he is my grandfather, but he knows the Manx yarns about right. If it had been Midsummer Day now, and Philip had been in bed somewhere, It might have been his spirit coming home while he was sleeping to where his heart is. They're telling of the like, anyway." Kate read the mystery after her own manner, and on the following night, at the approach of 10 o'clock, she went into the parlour of the hall, whence a window looked out onto the road. The day had been dull and the night was misty. A heavy white hand seemed to have come down onto the face of sea and land. Everything lay still and dead and ghostly. Kate was in the dark room, trembling, but not with fear. Presently a form that was like a shadow passed under a lamp that glimmered opposite. She could see only the outlines of a Spanish cape, but she listened for the footsteps, and she knew them. They came on and paused, came up and paused again, and then they went past and deadened off and died in the dense night air. Kate's eyes were red and swollen when she came back to supper. She had promised herself enjoyment of Philip's sufferings. There was no enjoyment, but only a cry of yearning from the deep place where love calls to love. She tried afresh to make the thought of Philip sink to the lowest depth of her being. It was hard, it was impossible. Pete was forever strengthening the recollection of him, of his ways, his look, his voice, his laugh. What he said was only the echo of her own thoughts. But it was pain and torment nevertheless. She felt like crying, "Let me alone, let me alone." People in the town began to talk of Mrs. Gorry's mysterious stories. Philip will be forced to come now, thought Kate. And he came. Kate was alone. It was afternoon. Dinner was over. The hearth was swept, the fire was heaped up, and the rug was down. He entered the porch quietly, tapped lightly at the door, and stepped into the house. He hoped she was well. She answered mechanically. He asked after Pete. She replied vacantly that he had been gone since morning on some fishing business to Peel. It was a commonplace conversation, brief, cold, almost trivial. He spoke softly and stood in the middle of the floor, swinging his soft hat against his leg. She was standing by the fire, with one hand on the mantelpiece and her head half aside, looking sideways towards his feet. But she noticed that his eyes looked larger than before, and that his voice, though so soft, had a deeper tone. At first she did not remember to ask him to sit, and when she thought of it she could not do so. The poor little words would have been a formal recognition of all that had happened so terribly, that she was mistress in that house and the wife of Pete. End of Part 4, Chapter 3.